So Saturday was basically spring game Saturday. There were dozens of spring games all across the country. And I tuned into a couple because we live in a college football world now where I think even if you said 10 years ago that darn near every spring game would be televised, whether it's on ESPN Plus or in Ohio State's case this week and Michigan's case next week on Fox or Big Ten Network, SEC Network, ACC Network, whatever the case may be, I think you'd have thought like, well, what, are we really that hard up for football? And yeah, I think so. I think you want to watch spring games. I tuned up Ohio State. I tuned up Virginia Tech. I watched Miami for a little bit, Florida at the very end, Alabama for a little bit. And there was one kind of recurring theme, and I think it's really important because from the schools who finished spring practice on Saturday with their spring game until the really fall camp starts, especially at schools where they have a quarterback battle coming up, or it's a possibility, or you're really excited about maybe a five-star recruit coming in or something like that. Not all quarterback battles or quarterback play in spring games are equal. And I think that's an important thing to distinguish and remember, because what a coach wants to see from the prospective starter, or if there is a battle, is kind of, you want to see ones versus ones, right? I want to see our quarterback try to run our offense versus our defense, versus real live action. What does it look like? How does it look? How do we get better before the season starts? Because you're going to want to have that information. You don't want to trot out a quarterback in the first game, whether it's a new starter, whether it's a transfer, and there are dozens, hundreds of transfers. I think it was 67 Power 5 quarterbacks had transferred in after the 2023 season. Like, it's a lot. You're breaking in guys out of high school, guys that have transferred, or maybe a new starter, or somebody who's projected to be your new starter. What a coach wants to see out of that guy is inherently different than an 18-year-old who should still be in the hot lunch line at their school, at their high school. Those are drastically different things that you're trying to gather, what you're trying to work on, etc. So, for instance, I watched the entire 2-hour Ohio State spring game. What Ohio State wants to learn from Will Howard or Devin Brown, who are the two guys that are likely to battle for the starting quarterback job going into fall camp, are inherently different than what they want to see from Julian Sayin and Aaron Noland, two guys that should still be in high school, but are enrolled early at Ohio State, where you're just basically like, do you have a basic grasp of what we're trying to do? Do you get the ball out quickly? Do you read the defense well? Can you get your pre-snap reads right? All of those things, where that's college quarterbacking 101, essentially. Is, okay, we've had 15 practices. You've been here for 2 months, essentially. Have you gotten down? It's essentially like the final exam from spring practice. And if anything, it might be the ACT or SAT of, are you going to gain admission to our program for the fall? Meanwhile, the starting quarterbacks, or the guys that you, want to see what they are, who they are, what they could bring to your team in the fall, they've already been admitted. They've already passed. They got the high enough score on the SAT or ACT that they are now into like, okay, can I get you to graduate level courses? Because that's, by the end of the season, we might need graduate level quarterback play to get us to where we want to be. So not every quarterback battle, every quarterback rep, even down to each snap, are not created equal. And so when you see early responses about this quarterback played better than this quarterback, because you could argue, if you wanted to, from watching the Ohio State spring game on Fox on Saturday, you could argue that Julian Sayin played better than Aaron Noland, and Julian Sayin played better than Devin Brown or Will Howard. Now, I wouldn't make that argument, but you could argue it, and I would sit here and listen to you make that argument. What was asked of Julian Sayin is incredibly different than what was asked of Will Howard or Devin Brown. Because, and I'll maintain this for as long as I live, because you can see it, especially in the NFL, when a quarterback is thrust into a spot where they might not be ready just 100% yet, or they weren't expecting to be in the spot that they're in, or you have a quarterback you don't really believe a whole lot in, and you are not expecting or entrusting the entire offense and expecting them to march you down the field and win the football game for you. Tight ends and running backs are a young quarterback, and an experienced quarterback, or a frankly just not that good quarterback. Tight end running backs are their best friends. Middle of the field, kind of left alone sometimes. In their high percentage passes a lot of the time. Now, obviously, if you're trying to make the tight end a focal point of your offense, that changes. But for the most part, tight ends and running backs are easy to complete passes to in the grand scheme of things. And what I think you saw a little bit, and I saw in other games too, where somebody's making their first kind of plays as a college quarterback out of high school, or if they went somewhere for a year or two, didn't play a whole lot, and now are transferring, you see throws to tight ends and running backs because the game's pretty quick. Like it moves pretty fast. So the idea that you have to process that information as quick as somebody who's maybe been doing this for 4 years or 5 years, it's not fair. It's not equal. And I think it's important to remember that, where if a fifth-year quarterback was playing against the twos, or was given our base play is this, yeah, they could probably operate that. But if you ask a freshman quarterback or somebody just new to the program, whatever the case may be, hey, I need you to operate our most complex schemes on April 13th, it's just probably not, they're probably not going to look very good. And so generally, coaches know what they're doing. They know that they need to instill a little bit of confidence into some guys, so you get those high percentage completions. Hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit tight ends, running backs out of the backfield, quick screens, short routes, where, you get this guy's going to run a slant, this guy's going to run a flat. You have one decision to make. Figure it out. Rather than, all right, if you get to your fifth progression, or if you got to get to scramble a little bit, step up in the pocket, etc., it's just not apples to apples. And so I think it's important to remember that. And we've talked about the importance of spring practice and the importance of what everybody's trying to accomplish during spring practices. But on this specific position basis, it's easy. It's really easy to look at it and go, well, that guy played better than that guy. That guy should be this guy should be the starter. I would caution you against that, because while you can see flashes of what this guy could be down the line, etc., like for instance, Jalen Milroe at Alabama looked significantly different in the Alabama spring game yesterday than Jalen Milroe looked in the regular season last year for Alabama. What he looks like now is completely transformed from even during the season against, he didn't play against South Florida because he pouted because he got benched. Alabama had quarterback problems to start the season last year, and they end up in the playoff. So there are big leaps that can be made, and you can see flashes of greatness that make you be just salivate, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be spectacular. But it's not apples to apples compared to what somebody else might be running, and I think that's important to know. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that's coming out of here at Saturday Glory. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It helps us get in front of more college football fans. It really does help the channel, and I appreciate you doing so. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle here on Saturday Glory.